Warriors may like to think of themselves as strong, ably handling the rigors of battle. But exposure to the trauma of military service may leave scars that last for a lifetime. Thanks for joining us today for Weekend Connection. Now, let's get connected. Hi, and welcome to Weekend Connection. The U.S. Armed Forces. They serve during war or peacetime, serving and protecting, but warriors need support too. And today we talk about the needs of servicemen and women and their families as we hear from wife and mother Sherry Hall, a spokesperson for the Real Warriors campaign. Originally from Oklahoma, Sherry Hall has been an Army spouse for more than 20 years. She's the mother of two and has supported her husband through multiple deployments and psychological health concerns and understands the challenges, pressures, and experiences that military families face. Welcome to Weekend Connection.
Thank you for having me.
How do military families deal with the inherent dangers associated with military service?
I can speak from us as a family. Before Jeff deployed, the first time we openly discussed with our girls exactly how risky Dad's job was, and that he would be facing some things that, he never wants us to have to face. And just always encouraging them to stand on their faith and know that, in the long run, everything is going to work out the way that it's supposed to. But for us, open communication was key. And so we continue to have that open line of communication.
Well, let's talk about that time when your husband came back. Let's say he's been gone for 6 months. You've had to handle things that he normally would have done. Now he's back. Is it hard for a wife to let go of some of those things that she's been doing and let him take some of those tasks on again?
For me personally, it wasn't. I was ready for Jeff to be home. But what I did is I eased him back in at his own pace. I let him have back what he wanted right away, but I didn't force him. I could read that something wasn't clicking with him, that his mind was elsewhere at the time. So again, I didn't want to force that upon him until he was ready.
We're talking with Sherry Hall, military wife and mother of two. She's been talking about the challenges, pressures, and experiences that military families face. Did your husband say over the years that there were certain things you did that really helped him in that transition when he came back or when he was about to leave? Things that especially he noticed that help in that transition?
He looks back now and he realizes that I had more strength than even I knew I had. I encouraged him to seek help, but I didn't force it upon him. And not pushing everything back on him right away. If I'd have pushed everything back on him right away, he's just afraid that he probably would have broke.
These days, more ladies are involved in the armed forces, and sometimes it's mom who goes out on deployment, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and I do know a few families who mom is the one that's deployed, and that's really especially hard for not only for the children but for the mom. You miss out on a lot. There are times when a child just needs their mom, and I would imagine that it would be similar, but there's always that fear of that uncertainty. What lies ahead, just like there would, in our case where Jeff was the service member. So, yeah, there's definitely some challenges that go with mom being gone, too.
Are there times when both man and wife, that both are involved and they're deployed to different locations, or does that not happen?
Some friends of ours knew a couple who they both were active duty service members, and the wife actually stepped out of uniform when her husband got deployment orders just so that she could stay home so that they wouldn't both be gone at the same time. I have also heard of military families who dual military soldiers, and one will deploy, and then when that one comes home, usually the other one will deploy. So again, in a sense, the children are dealing with back-to-back deployments. It's just separate parents. There are tools with RealWarriorsNet .net to help with that. They work with Sesame Street, and that's a great way to connect with those smaller children, I think.
We're talking with Sherry Hall, spokesperson for the Real Warriors campaign, a wife and mother of two, talking about military life. Well, as you talk about the support system, is it important for other military families to support you and others during those time of deployment?
Absolutely. That was my greatest support were my, I call them my sisters. They were my greatest support because we all understood where each other was coming from. At that time, we were all wives and our husbands were all deployed. So that was definitely my greatest support, especially because my family would be so far away. The people that you surround yourself with when your husband is or your spouse is in the military, that is really your strongest support.
Well, the military supplies chaplains, and many families find help and support through their churches as well, don't they?
Yes, they do, and chaplains are well informed in how to help families. We've worked with a chaplain before ourselves, so they're always there to help. And yes, you're right. Within your community church, I attended church on the installation, so again, I had that support at Fort Riley. So I had everybody in the chapel with me was actually going through the same thing. But yeah, your community church, definitely, there's a lot of support from churches across the country. Will send care packages to the soldiers and cards to the spouses. So it's really great to know that you can depend on somebody else is praying for you and your soldier. That burden doesn't just lay all on your shoulders.
Let's talk a little bit more about married life when it comes to military families. Are we seeing a lot of marriages that break up because of all the stress and problems related to military life?
I do know of a couple who may not have been able to handle the stress of more of the coming home than necessarily the stress of the deployment. From my standpoint, I've seen probably more of my friends really struggle in their marriages with the invisible wound that their soldier comes back with, as opposed to the stress of their soldier being gone, on a 12-month basis. But again, reaching out, whether it's through realwarriors.net or any other resource that you may choose to reaching out and finding where the tools are that you can use to help you, your chaplains, your home church, any of those are really helpful, I think.
Originally from Oklahoma, she's been an Army spouse for more than 20 years, the mother of two, and has supported her husband through multiple deployments and psychological health concerns. She understands the challenges, pressures, and experiences military families face. Well, let's talk a little bit about the children and what they are dealing with. We think about the 1.8 million military children and their contributions. What would you say for a young mother? Maybe she is a newlywed, a young mother. What are some of the things that you would tell her about the adjustment to military life?
It takes time. It takes patience. Don't listen to rumor, but always ask questions if you have them. When Jeff first joined back in 1988, I was a scared 21-year-old and first time away from home, and I was in a foreign country. So always asking questions kind of helped me to learn to be able to be independent, because you do have to be independent as a military spouse, willing to ask questions so that you can better understand.
Just adjusting to marriage is a challenge enough without being in another country and all the other things going on in military life. Did you see that the age and maturity levels of your children, that helped them or affected how they responded to the challenges of military life? If they were maybe a little bit older or more mature, that was a part of them making the adjustment?
I think so. They, were really young when Jeff first joined. So, but as growing up and knowing that we moved a lot, and they were used to that. So, but I do think that their maturity level and their willingness to ask questions and our willingness to be open. Military children are very resilient too, and the older they get, the stronger they become. And so, again, just those open lines of communication.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the wounds, and more specifically the unseen wounds as we think about the family member coming back from deployment, post-traumatic stress disorder. How would you explain what that is? I think a lot of people have heard the term, but may not be really clear on what it means.
Well, I think it takes on a different definition for each soldier. I can just tell you in our case, it was a lot more anger. For him being prepared, it wasn't what he saw, and it was never a physical issue, but it was always an anger issue. And and then he did deal with some suicidal ideations at some times. He just didn't want to inflict that pain on us anymore. And for him, that was a rational thought that if I go away, they will be better, which would not have helped in our situation for those of us left behind. And once I explained that to him, he understood that he needed to get help.
Now, is it something that it takes a while to even realize that you are in need of help?
In some cases, yes. It took Jeff 2.5 years. 2.5 years to really realize that he needed help. And in the course of that 2.5 years, I saw, I'd already seen a change in him, and I just saw that change just gradually grow and get worse and worse over time. So, yeah, you don't always reach out right away. And again, with that sometimes comes the fear of the stigma that's attached to that, as well as the fact that this may end their career and take their livelihood away from them and their family.
We're talking with Sherry Hall, spokesperson for the Real Warriors campaign, wife and mother of two, talking about family life, but also about post-traumatic stress disorder in particular. I was wondering if there was one particular incident that you would say caused your husband's PTSD, or is it hard to pinpoint any one particular cause?
I think it's kind of a buildup over 2 deployments, coming home, and he went from his duty station in Kansas. We moved to Louisiana. He was at the Joint Readiness Training Center. So he basically went from one battlefield to another because now he's training soldiers to deploy. So I think over time it was just a buildup of all that anger and all those things that he had pushed down. So, but that's just our case. But for us, it was kind of it took 2.5 years, so it was a buildup, festering, if I guess is the best word to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, as much as they're trained to have a warrior mentality and to fight on even when you feel like quitting, it is hard for them to admit weakness and to get help sometimes, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And on top of that warrior mentality, the pride that goes along with being able to be strong and serve your country and serve your family the way that you're supposed to. But for Jeff, he also had some physical injuries that he had sustained in combat. So the pain from that wore on him as well. And that just fueled more of his I think more of his concern with where he was going with his feelings. He hurt a lot, physically and emotionally. So it can wear on you, and it can cause you to really break down. In Jeff's case, anyway, he really broke down.
Well, how is he doing now?
He's doing great now. It's an everyday process. You don't fully 100% heal from this, but it's an everyday ongoing thing. He's retired now after 23 years, and so he's in another stage of his life. It's another chapter for us, but we are very thankful to have the Real Warriors campaign so that we can continue to reach out to service members, active duty, Guard, Reserve, veterans, families, and talk about what we went through and let them know that you can survive and you can move on, and that there is somebody there to help you, whether it's, their outreach center, which is 24/7, and there's always a live person that you can talk to at that number. It's 866-966-1020. I can't stress that enough. We've used that line to call, and it's confidential. So that's the great thing about it being realwarriors.net. It's confidential. Reaches out, covers all branches of the military.
That's realwarriors.net, realwarriors.net, or the phone number 866-966-1020. Sherry Hall sharing her experiences and some of the things she's learned through military life. And we thank you, Sherry, for coming and sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this feature, a production of BBN, the Bible Broadcasting Network. BBN provides 24-hour Christian programming, great Christian music, and Bible teaching. Listen to BBN by clicking the link in the description.